This soldier has arrived on an Earth-like planet, but unbeknownst to him, he is about to have a great revelation about the alien world. The year is 2154, and Jake Sully, a former Marine, is living life as a cripple because he lost the ability to use his legs owing to a spinal injury during combat. A cure is available for his condition, but he can't afford it on a soldier's salary. At a bar, Jake sees a man slap a woman, while no one does anything to stop him. Jake rolls over, takes the man's stool out from underneath him, and proceeds to beat him up on the ground. He's always willing to stand up for the weak. That might be a poor choice of words. Jake is thrown out of the bar, and as he is lying in a puddle, two agents arrive and inform him that his twin brother Tommy has been murdered in a mugging. The agents tell Jake that Tommy was a significant investment of their organization, the Resource Development Administration, or RDA. But since the two are twins with identical genomes, Jake can take over his assignment, which is on another planet, and pays very handsomely. Jake spends the next 5 years in cryosleep as he travels to Pandora, the habitable moon of a planet called Polyphemus in the Alpha Centauri star system. As Jake and the other soldiers are about to land on Pandora, they are told to put on masks because the atmosphere is not suitable for humans. If exposed, they become unconscious in 20 seconds and die in 4 minutes. Jake and the others are greeted by Miles Quaritch, the head of the RDA security forces, who informs them that Pandora is a very dangerous place. There are all kinds of creatures present in the jungle which can and will kill them. He also tells them about the Na'vi, the humanoid locals of the planet. He informs them that they are violent and that they attack with arrows dipped in special neurotoxins. Next, Jake meets Dr. Norm Spellman. It is revealed that Jake and Norm are here to operate avatars, which are special bodies made from a mix of Na'vi and human DNA. The scientists conducting research on the planet use them to study the plant life and interact with the locals. Each avatar is specifically matched with the DNA of its operator, and Jake's avatar was originally for Tommy. But since the two have identical DNA, he can operate it. That is why he's been offered this job. Jake and Norm meet the head of the research program, Grace Augustine. She is pleased to meet Norm but isn't delighted by Jake. She says that he is useless to her, since she wanted his brother who was actually a scientist and not just some grunt soldier. Grace goes to complain about Jake being put on her team to the head of the RDA, Parker Selfridge. Parker says that he has been assigned as a security detail, and Grace replies that she does not want a trigger-happy moron out there with her. Parker reminds Grace that part of her job is to use the avatars to improve relationships with the Na'vi, but despite them building schools, teaching them English, and trying for years, relationships are still deteriorating. Hence, she should focus on her job. Grace says that relationships are deteriorating because RDA's army keeps committing acts of aggression against the Na'vi. Parker reminds her that the reason they are here is to mine the precious material called unobtainium, which sells for $20 million a kilo. That's what's funding this whole project, including her research. Now, the Na'vi are becoming an obstacle in their mining process, and it is her job to find a diplomatic solution. Next, Jake and Norm log in to try out their avatars for the first time. Jake has had no prior training, unlike the rest, so he is told to take it slow, but he is too excited to have the use of his legs back, and immediately goes for a run. He learns how to handle the avatar surprisingly quickly. Next, Jake meets Trudy, the pilot who flies all the scientists around, and she takes him to Miles, who has requested a meeting. Miles says that he wants Jake to work for Augustine, but answer to him. He asks Jake to learn all about the Na'vi inside out and provide the intel to him, so if it comes down to a war with them, he has all the info he needs to take them down. In return, he offers to get Jake his legs back when he returns home. Jake accepts. The next day, Jake, Grace, and Norm head out for an expedition, with Trudy flying them. Jake witnesses the vibrant plant and animal life on the planet for the first time. They arrive at the school where Grace taught the Na'vi. She says that the Na'vi were brilliant and learned faster than any human. Norm asks why they don't come back here. Grace solemnly looks at some bullet holes in the wall and says that the Na'vi learned all that they needed to about humans. Next, as Norm and Grace are collecting samples, Jake wanders off on his own and ends up encountering some dangerous animals. As he is on the run from the animal, he gets separated from the others. He escapes the beast by jumping down a waterfall. Next, as Jake is wandering through the jungle, a Na'vi woman named Neytiri aims her arrow at him. However, just then, a creature lands on her arrow, and she changes her mind. At night, Jake is desperately trying to survive against the many dangerous creatures in the jungle. A pack of leopard-like beasts attacks him, and he is almost killed, but Neytiri arrives and saves him. She kills all the beasts, but she seems to regret doing it. After shooting them with arrows, she gives them clean, swift deaths with a knife to their hearts. Jake thanks her, but she says that this is not something to thank for. This is sad, and it's all Jake's fault, because he wanders around like an ignorant child. Jake asks that if she cares for the beasts so much, why didn't she let them kill him? She replies because he has a strong heart with no fear. However, he is still stupid. Jake says that if he's stupid, Neytiri should teach him. She says that humans cannot be taught because they cannot see. She tells him to go away. Just then, the creature that landed on her arrow returns. Hundreds of these creatures arrive and sit on Jake. Neytiri says these are seeds of the sacred tree, very pure spirits. She tells him to come with her. On the way, Jake is caught and taken prisoner by other Na'vi people, and Neytiri converses with them in their native language. A man named Sute says that humans are forbidden from coming here, but Neytiri says that there has been a sign. Next, Jake is brought to an enormous tree where the Na'vi live. He is brought in front of the leader of their tribe, Neytiri's father, Etukan. He is unhappy with Jake's presence here, but Neytiri says there has been a sign from Ewa, the nature deity of the planet that the Na'vi worship. Next, Neytiri's mother, Moat, arrives. She is Tsahik, the one who interprets the will of Ewa. She asks Jake why he's here, and he says that he is here to learn. She says that they have tried to teach other humans before, but it is hard to fill a cup that is already full. He assures her that he's no scientist, and his cup is empty. After studying him for a bit, she agrees to let him stay, and tells Neytiri that she will teach him the ways of the Na'vi. Jake wakes up back at the RDA compound, and Grace is shocked that the Na'vi have agreed to let him stay. Meanwhile, Parker and Miles are impressed. They tell Jake to learn about the Na'vi and find a way to make them move, because their tree village is situated on top of the richest unobtainium deposit on the planet. If he doesn't accomplish this in 3 months, they will have no choice but to force the Na'vi out. Next, Jake wakes up in the village and begins his education. Neytiri teaches him how they form bonds with the wildlife to domesticate them. Jake has some trouble at the start. Meanwhile, Grace learns that Jake is reporting to Miles and Parker and decides to move the whole operation to a remote location away from the compound. Jake learns that Neytiri had a sister, and they were both students of Grace until Neytiri's sister got shot and killed in some accident involving the RDA's aggression. Neytiri tells Jake that the final step of his training will be to choose and form a bond with a flying creature called Ikran. A person's bond with an Ikran is for life, however, he is not ready for that yet. Jake spends the next couple of months learning from Neytiri. Neytiri teaches him the language, the hunting techniques, and about the connection of the spirits of all living things in the forest. The Na'vi have a strong connection with nature. Neytiri teaches Jake that there exists a network of energy in nature, and all energy is only borrowed. One day it has to be returned. Meanwhile, Jake talks to Moat and gets Grace permission to enter the village. One day, Jake asks Grace what happened to Neytiri's sister. Grace replies that she was angry at the RDA clearing out the forest to mine unobtainium, and she and a group of natives attacked one of their bulldozers. After the attack, they were chased by RDA forces, and they came to Grace's school thinking she would be able to protect them, but they were shot and killed. None of them have returned to the school since. Next, Jake makes a clean kill during a hunt, and Neytiri says that he is ready for the final step. Jake, Tsute, Neytiri, and a bunch of others arrive to choose their Ikran. Bonding with an Ikran is a difficult and life-threatening endeavor, but Jake manages to succeed. Neytiri is proud of him. While training to fly, Jake sees the Tree of Souls, the most sacred place of the Na'vi. Grace explains to him that the readings from that site are mysterious, and there is something very curious happening there biologically. Meanwhile, during flight training, Neytiri starts softening up to Jake. and the two start to bond. One day, Jake and Neytiri are attacked by a massive Ikran, and they barely escape. Afterward, Neytiri tells him that this Ikran is called Toruk, and his rider is called Toruk Makto. Only 5 Na'vi people have ever managed to bond with Toruk, and it's always happened in a time of great sorrow. Those leaders always united the different clans to face the hardships together. Next, Jake realizes that he barely remembers his old life anymore, and his life as one of the Na'vi feels like the real one. Miles meets with him and says that his intel on the Tree of Souls has given him the Na'vi's weakness. Jake's mission is done. He will go home tonight and get his legs back. Jake says that there is a ceremony after which he truly becomes one of the Na'vi. Once that is done, he may be able to convince them to move. The ceremony is conducted, and afterward, Neytiri takes Jake to the sacred Tree of Voices. Jake connects with the tree and hears the voices of the Na'vi ancestors. He is shocked. Neytiri says that they all live within Awa. Then Neytiri says that Jake may choose a Na'vi woman to mate with, now that he is one of them. Jake says that he chooses Neytiri, and the two proceed to make hot blue love. The next morning, an RDA bulldozer arrives and tears down the sacred trees. Neytiri tries to wake Jake up, but he is not connected. When he finally connects, he climbs up on the dozer and destroys its camera. When the Na'vi find out about this, they decide to go to war against the humans. Meanwhile, when Miles discovers that Jake sabotaged a bulldozer, he immediately heads out to arrest him, Grace, and Norm. Jake arrives to speak to the Na'vi and advise them against the war, because they cannot win. However, just then, Miles interrupts their connection and takes them back to the compound. Grace and Jake explain to Parker that he just bulldozed a very sacred site. Parker doesn't care, but Grace explains that Na'vi beliefs are not pagan nonsense. There is actually some amazing biology happening in the trees. Their connections are like synapses in the brain. It is a network that the Na'vi can access and store data in, like memories. Parker thinks she is being crazy and decides to continue with the mining process. The Na'vi attack and destroy RDA bulldozers, and Miles says that now they have no option but to attack the Na'vi home tree to make them leave. When Jake learns this, he tries to stop Parker, because he'd be killing innocent people. Parker gives Jake 1 hour to talk to the Na'vi and convince them to evacuate before the attack begins. Jake and Grace arrive to tell the Na'vi to evacuate, but they ask Jake how he knows of the attack, and when he reveals that he's been reporting to the RDA, the Na'vi, particularly Neytiri, are heartbroken that Jake broke their trust. They don't listen to him and tie him and Grace up. Miles arrives with his squadron, and the attack begins. The Na'vi try to fight back, but their weapons are of no use against modern technology. Miles fires missiles at the home tree, bringing it crashing down, killing hundreds of Na'vi, and leaving the rest devastated. Moat frees Jake and Grace during all this and begs for their help. Meanwhile, Aitukan dies after being impaled. Jake tries to comfort Neytiri, but she tells him to get lost. Parker interrupts Jake and Grace's connection, and they come out enraged after all they've seen. They are jailed along with Norm. Trudy breaks the trio out of jail, but while they are escaping the compound, Miles finds out and he tries to stop them. During the commotion, Grace is shot. They grab the link cabin, tie it to the aircraft, and take it to a place where the RDA can't find them. Jake realizes that only the Na'vi can help Grace, who is getting worse, but to get them to listen to him, he'll have to do something big. He decides to try and bond with Toruk and become Toruk Makto. As the Na'vi are praying at the Tree of Souls, Jake arrives riding Toruk. They are all shocked. Jake apologizes to Neytiri, and they reunite. Tsuti also respects Jake now because he is Toruk Makto. Jake begs for their help to save Grace. Moat says that they may be able to transfer Grace's soul to her avatar, but she would have to pass through the Eye of Awa and return, which she may be too weak to do. As the procedure is happening, Grace suddenly says to Jake that she can see Awa. She is real, but then she becomes unconscious and passes away. Moat says that her wounds were too great. Enraged, Jake gives a rousing speech to the Na'vi in which he says that they will not let the humans take their land. They will fight. Over the next few days, he rides to different parts of the planet and invites the other clans to join their fight. They all answer his call. Miles learns that the Na'vi are mobilizing and decides to conduct a preemptive attack before they get too organized. He decides to destroy the Tree of Souls to break their spirit. He really is the worst. The night before the attack, Jake arrives at the Tree of Souls and asks Awa to help them in this battle. Neytiri says that Awa does not take sides. The next day, Miles' squadron arrives, with a massive bomber specifically headed for Tree of Souls, and the battle begins. The Na'vi attack both the air and ground human forces, and both sides suffer casualties. Miles specifically focuses on taking Jake out. After some fighting, the human forces start overpowering the Na'vi. Tsute and Trudy are shot and killed, alongside hundreds of others. Jake and Neytiri realize they are going to lose. However, just then, all the ferocious wildlife on the planet starts attacking the human forces, and Neytiri joyfully exclaims that Awa has answered Jake's call. The human forces are defeated, and Jake personally takes out the bomber headed for the Tree of Souls. He then takes out the aircraft Miles is in, but Miles escapes in time in a fighter suit, seeking personal revenge against Jake. Miles finds Jake's link cabin and tries to destroy it, but he is stopped by Neytiri. He fights Neytiri and kills the animal she is riding, trapping her under its weight. As he is about to kill her, Jake arrives, and a fight begins between the two. Miles breaks the window to the link cabin, making it hard for the real Jake to breathe. His connection is interrupted, and taking advantage, Miles almost kills him, but Neytiri frees herself in time and shoots 2 arrows into Miles' chest. She puts a mask on the real Jake and sees his real self for the first time. With the war won, the Na'vi force the RDA to go back to their own planet. Jake and Norm stay behind. Finally, at his request, Moat performs the procedure to transfer Jake's soul into his avatar body, and this time it works. He opens his eyes as a real Na'vi for the first time. The end. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.